faith in from, but I don't know where faith's in from. If you move so much, like Columbus.
Not too far.
Okay. Usually it's across the ocean somewhere. She's a world traveler. Good to have all the couch kids here today, and everybody else too. I trust Christmas was good. Blessed time, wasn't it, with family. And Christmas, with all the power that it possesses, and yet with all of its meaning, we are to be a people looking forward. Jesus began to gently remind the disciples of the future as we just glance at John's Gospel, chapter 13, a few of the verses. He's beginning to remind them, little children, he said, I shall be with you a little while longer. You will seek me. And as I said to the Jews, where I am going, you cannot come. So now I say to you, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus answered, where I'm going, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow me afterward. And Peter said, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I'll lay down my life for your sake. And Jesus, skipping a verse down in 14:1, says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again. I will come again. He's saying, quit looking backwards. Quit being stuck in the here and now. Look forward. Look forward. That's kind of my overriding thought this morning. I think that we're to be a forward looking people. Charles Stanley, just a remark of his this week just clicked with me. And he says, in Dr. Stanley's southern drawl that he has, he says, I don't think Jesus ever anticipated the great emphasis put on his birth that we put today. Did you think about that? What a focus. And I'm not saying it's not important. It is good to remind ourselves of the coming of Christ's child and how he tabernacled among us and the Word became flesh and all those thoughts that we've been meditating on Sunday mornings here the past 2 or 3 weeks. But we are to be a forward-looking people. The second coming of Jesus changes everything for us as we begin to look ahead. And Jesus didn't let up on the disciples, you might say, as we go into some of the difficult teachings of Matthew 24. We know there's alluding to times already fulfilled and alluding to times that are yet to come. But there in 24, listen to 36, where Jesus says, but of that day and hour no one knows. He's saying, when I come again, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will be the coming of the Son of Man be. He goes on to flesh out a few more details there. His parables made them think of it. The kingdom of heaven will be like this, and he would go into an illustration there. Peter spoke of the second coming, reminding folks of the time, and We were here a few weeks ago, but I want to visit again just for a moment. Knowing this first, that scoffers will come in the last days, walking according to their own lust, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continued as they were from the creation, from the beginning of creation. Verse 9, the Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness, but is long-suffering toward us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord, Peter says, will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. And it seems as if God himself is leading them forward as we look at the beginning of the book of Acts there in chapter 1, where Jesus is first talking to the apostles and giving them instructions, and then listen to verse 10 as we get some detail. And while they, being the apostles, stood looking steadily toward heaven as he went up, that being Jesus ascending, two men stood by them in white apparel, who also said, men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will so come in like manner as you saw him go into heaven. In other words, guys, one of these days, he's coming back just like you saw him go up. Be watchful. Stay alert. Look ahead. As God's people, a bigger emphasis, I think, must be put on his coming again. We're the bride. We need to be ready. It changes everything. To quote Dr. Stanley again, he says, it must be uppermost in our minds. Uppermost in our minds. I don't think, church, as I look around, we think about the second coming with the same emphasis that we look forward to the Christmas holiday. You ever notice that? What fanfare. But not very many people think about the second coming of Jesus. You know, in a way, the Jews and the apostles were stuck, as I thought about that. The Jewish people especially were stuck in such a way that they were looking backwards a lot to the customs, the traditions, the rituals of the times. As we think about the apostles, they were one step forward, but in a sense, they were stuck in the here and now. They were spending time with Jesus. They didn't want to go forward. Go away. Jesus, we don't want you to go away. We want you to stay here. We like having you with us. They were stuck. As I thought about us, a lot of times we're stuck in the same way that the Jews and the apostles were. We look back to the comfortable traditions, rituals, and customs that we enjoy. And we look at the apostles, and they were stuck in the here, and we are too. We're stuck in the here and now. It's kind of good, isn't it? We played games yesterday. We ate too much pie yesterday. I'm still full, I think. We had company last night. I rarely do this, but I just give up and went to bed while the company was still there. That's having too much fun, isn't it? I'm sure the company looked around and thought, where did Curt go? I whispered to Rhonda, I'm going to bed. I have to have a few brain cells in the morning to stand before Meg's Church of Christ. We're stuck in the here and now. We're having a lot of fun. I don't want to do away with those fun traditions and fun times. But Jesus was prodding them onward. Look forward, he says. And that brings us to mind, how? Is there any examples that we can look to or advice that we could find in the Word of God to help us out? I want to glance at a character, one of those obscure characters this morning that does give us a hint. We don't think very much about Hannah, prophetess Hannah. And you know, I'm fascinated by these two characters that baby Jesus met as his parents brought them to the temple to fulfill the rituals of the day that needed to be fulfilled. Simeon fascinates me. If we back up, you know, he's the old guy waiting on Messiah so that he can die in peace. And we can think about him giving his little speech there in Luke 2:29. Lord, he would say, I can now depart in peace according to your word, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you've prepared before the face of all peoples, a light to bring revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. And then he spoke directly to Mary. It says there, Mary, a sword will pierce through your soul also, that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed. And then we pop right into Anna's little section here, just 3 short verses. But yet it gives us so much of a glimpse maybe of what we need to be thinking about as God's people in the time that we live in right here. Now there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel, the tribe of Asher. She was of great age and had lived with a husband 7 years from her virginity. And this woman was a widow of about 84 years, who did not depart from the temple, but served God with fastings and prayers night and day. And coming in that instant, she gave thanks to the Lord and spoke of him to all those who looked for redemption in Israel. I like verse 38 there. And coming in that instant. You know, here's Simeon. I picture him talking to Mary there and enjoying seeing Messiah, the baby, and all the thoughts surrounding that. And then in that instant, the way I read it, Anna is there on the scene as well. These two we can learn from. They were looking ahead. They were watching. I want to sneak a parable in here right now because I think it fits so well. You don't have to turn here, but just reflect on these thoughts. Then the kingdom of heaven, Jesus said, shall be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 were wise and 5 were foolish. Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. But while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept, and at midnight a cry was heard, Behold, the bridegroom is coming, go out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, No, lest there should not be enough for us and you, but go rather to those who sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. Afterward, the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Assuredly I say to you, I do not know you. Listen up, church. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. Watch therefore. There's Simeon. And there's Anna. Faithful old people who had lived their years aside. Don't be caught asleep. You know, looking to Jesus changes things. I alluded to that thought just a little bit ago. Looking to the coming of Jesus changes things. Changes everything for us. Listen to Paul's thoughts in the book of Colossians here as we break into chapter 3. If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. Watching for the second coming of Jesus changes everything for us. Set your mind on things above. Changes how we think, how we live, what we are anticipating, how we view the world around us and the events that are taking place around us as we bounce it off of a biblical worldview. A lot of things going on in the world today, church. This should be the lens of which we are filtering things. Be ready for your groom. We're the bride of Christ. And as I was thinking about that, Jesus, in a way, was reminding the disciples that he was going away and coming back, because as we glance back, you know, Old Testament prophecy gets all complicated and twisty, and there's lots of thoughts entering into it. But Psalm 45 talks about the bride being ready for the bridegroom, and a picture of a married scene. And you know what? That's us. That's us. In a way, that's prophecy talking about the second coming, when Jesus would be coming back. Set your minds on things above. That second return changes how we live. Back to Hannah. My wife says I have ADD. See how it goes from one thought. A whole different world. Back to Hannah. 3 short verses immerse us into her life. Hannah, a prophetess, a lady of faith, we know from that. She was of a great age, it says, 87 years. She's there, on hand, alert, watching. It says she gave thanks. Does that tell us a lot about this older saint in the Lord? It's given me a background perspective that tells me a lot about Hannah. Barclay takes us behind the scenes just a little here as we look at Simeon and Hannah. And it says, as the Jews, a people, existed, almost all of them believed they were God's chosen people, and most believed that God would intervene in somehow a miraculous way. Maybe a powerful leader such as King David would pop onto the scene again, and they would be a great armed force in the world. Or God would intervene in a miraculous way to make them the chosen people. Most believed that way. Key word, most. But there were those called the quiet in the land. Isn't that a phrase? The quiet in the land. It seems Simeon and Anna would be part of these folk, the quiet in the land. They were waiting patiently on God in prayer and watchfulness to see what God was going to do and how He would act in making them the chosen people. And again, focusing on Hannah more with the magnifying glass lens. A widow who had known sorrow. We know that. She's old, 87 years. Lost her husband. We know that life had handed her some blows through time. And Barclay's first thought would be a widow who had known sorrow but not grown bitter. Think about that. A widow who had known sorrow but not grown bitter. Sorrow can make us bitter, resentful, jealous, or kinder, softer, and sympathetic. It seems we have a fork in the road when life hands us these hard things. We can go down the path where our heart gets hard and bitter, or it seems with God's help, it opens us up to even more kindness and understanding and sympathy towards those around us who are experiencing the same thing. And the same thought would be, there's a fork in the road with our faith when we experience these hard blows in our life. On one side, we can turn away from our faith, and on the other side, these hard things in life can root it even deeper, and we come out the other side stronger than before we went in. It seems Anna had deepened her faith and mellowed with age, and she was waiting for Messiah. So that might be a thought for us, church, as we're looking ahead, as we digest what we can learn from the old lady Anna. Can we know sorrow and not grow bitter? Second thought, she was old but had not ceased to hope. She was old but had not ceased to hope. Let me read a little bit from Barclay here to kind of illustrate that thought. She was 84 years of age. Age can take away the bloom and the strength of our bodies, but age can do worse. The years can take away the life of our hearts until the hopes that once we cherished die, and we become dully content and grimly resigned to things as they are. Again, it all depends on how we think of God. If we think of Him as distant and detached, we may well despair, but if we think of Him as intimately connected with life, as having His hand on the helm, we too will be sure that the best is yet to be, and the years will never kill our hope. Old, but had never ceased to hope. Reminds me of that song, Ron, that I used to sing, the best is yet to come. Some of you can remember two old folks with hair of silver, with lines upon their face. They share a strong contentment of God's everlasting grace. I better stop while I'm ahead. I'll forget some words before long. Stayed up too late last night. But it's a good song. The best is yet to come. With Anna's faith, she knew the best was yet to come. Strong lessons for us. And how was Anna like this? Man, it gets even better, doesn't it? Don't you love the Word of God? As we break down these questions, we kind of see what she was doing, but we can go behind the scenes and begin to ask ourselves, what made her like this? There's some hints hidden in these few words here that we have of Anna. Look at verse 37. And this woman, it says, was a widow of about 84 years. Key phrase coming up here, who did not depart from the temple. What's that tell you about her? Her innermost being and workings of her mind and faith and what her heart was focused upon. It made me dig a book off my bookshelf, Spiritual Disciplines of a Godly People. One of those jewels that's on my shelf. And it says, why worship with God's people? I kind of jumped off of that thought here of the importance of Anna being in the temple and never leaving it and worshiping her God, and we can focus on all the important things that worship does in our life. And then kind of add to this thought of what happens when you and I do it together. When we walk in the doors of the church house or gather as God's people in the far pastures of the Cobb farm and have a wiener roast. Things are happening when we gather together. Listen to these few thoughts I've jotted down here. When we worship with God's people, God reveals himself more clearly in a congregational setting than in nature. That's what I've got. You've heard the old saying, oh, but I experience God so much better out there in the bass boat or on the golf course or wherever. Y'all know I like those moments too. I've got favorite places. I like to hike in my woods, and I experience God in my woods and around the lake and the pond and in the bass boat with Barry. All those are good places. But don't forget the importance of meeting God with God's people and how God reveals. There's thoughts behind that of how he reveals himself more clearly with God's people. I think we'll work a few of those out as we look at a couple more thoughts. God is glorified, number two, God is glorified more in a congregational setting than in a private setting. Did you ever think about that? You know, sometimes God really moves in our quiet times, our private worship times. He does. He does. But think about God moving in a corporate setting with people. There's something about that glorifies God, isn't it? You know, for one thing, it's visible. The world sees it. The world sees us gather at Meg's Church of Christ on Sunday morning. It sees the cars here. It sees us leave the house and come here and come back home. And it don't even see all the things that happens in here. We do. Now, an unbeliever might come in and really be moved by God at the worship he sees here. And that's a whole other angle to itself, I think, of God being glorified more in a congregation. Those things just don't happen in private that much. So God, in a way, is glorified more as we gather. And I'm kind of bouncing all these thoughts, picturing Anna in the temple there. You know, God had her there for a reason. Even to be recorded for us to be meditating on it today, of her and Simeon there. Thirdly, there's more edifying in a corporate setting than a private setting. There's more edifying. You know, it's really hard for me to build you up and encourage you if you're not here. Think about that. That's pretty profound, isn't it? If you're not here, that can't happen. But you can't build me up either. Works both ways. You know, there's more edifying done when we're together. That was God's plan. God can be experienced in more unique ways in a congregation. You know, I have a feeling you're going to experience some unique ways here in a few minutes. Me and Art's going to try to sing. That's a unique way. You can't experience that in private, that uniqueness. But you can when we're together. We enjoy one another's talents and gifts and things that happen. You know what? As a minister, one of the big ways I get fed when I have time. When I get here early enough. When guys like Paul comes up and reads the call to worship and gives thoughts and communion meditations and so forth, that feeds me. Don't think that's not important, you guys. I get tired of hearing myself talk all the time. I enjoy hearing your creative activity as the guys come forward, and Dan comes up and Barry comes up, and each one of you have your own unique perspectives that can't be experienced as well in solitude as it can cooperatively. And secondly, as we go a little deeper with Anna here, what else does it tell us about it? She didn't depart from the temple, but she served God with fastings and prayers day and night. Boy, that reveals more about her heart, doesn't it? And see how, church, this is showing us how we need to be living as we're looking ahead. We're looking ahead. There's a lot about worship there, fasting, prayer, being with one another, devoted to God. Prayer is our lifeline. Pray without ceasing, Paul says. Anna's praying day and night. She was a praying lady. Are you one of the quiet in the land this morning? Are you a quiet in the land as Simeon and Anna were? Even amongst the busyness of the holiday, the enjoying the thoughts of the Christ child coming, is part of your mind still looking ahead? Even so, come, Lord Jesus. Part of our minds out there looking and watching and being alert, even in these hours that you and I are living in. Tumultuous times, it seems. You ever know, I heard just a glimpse on the radio the other day, and it says, I have no idea if this is true or not. It was on Christian radio, I think. And he says, overall worldwide mortality is high right now. Lots of people getting sick and dying. You ever think about that? I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, or times really has shifted a little bit, but there's a lot of people sick and dying right now. Don't know the answer to that question either, but last night, danced on Facebook, little baby sick, rushed to the emergency room. It seems like every few hours there's a new, what's the word I'm looking for, emergency of someone being sick, someone urgently sick. One of our old friends, a massive heart attack last night. We used to play music with. He's recovering, I believe, but just all kinds of things and that's just the tip of the iceberg. As we look at health issues, all kinds of world things going on, even in our own church family, all kinds of things going on. Now we mourn with the Duncan family, with the loss of Brother Glenn. So in all these happenings in our world, my challenge today would be one of the quiet in the land. Just looking forward. Ronna's found a song that I'm going to close out my part of the message with that illustrates, I think, where we are, and it fits a lot of the thoughts that I'll have my tech man come forward and work on that. Elijah's on my payroll permanently as my tech man. I don't even try anymore. Santa Claus brought Art a new guitar, and he's gonna let me play. This song is challenging me a little bit this morning, but
And we didn't get to practice it, we just went through a little bit in the back. Jesus, there's just something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. King and kingdom will all pass away, but there's something about that name. Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. Master and Savior, Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms shall all pass away, but there's something about that name.
Amen.
Now I guess I'm on the spot. I heard a story this morning. It's a true story. It's kind of a sad story. Back in 39, there's this poor fellow that was a proofwriter. He had a wife that was dying with cancer. Had a little 4-year-old girl. Crawled up in Daddy's lap. It says, Daddy, why can't Mommy be like other people? And he tried to explain it to the little girl. Christmas was near. And like I say, this guy was a proofwriter. He worked for Montgomery Ward. So time went by and he's thinking about a song to write for a little girl for Christmas, because it was in poor times. It was right after the Depression. Nobody had any money. So he went to, finally got this song wrote. And as time went by, Christmas was nearing. And he went to the owner of Montgomery Ward's. So Montgomery Ward guy, the president, whatever you want to call him, manager, went to Frank Sinatra and tried to get Frank Sinatra to sing this song, this fellow had written it. He wouldn't do it. So he went to a country singer. I don't know how many of you remember Gene Autry. Back in his time, Gene Autry was the king of cowboys. And Gene Autry wrote this song. And believe it or not, this song, people don't realize, but it's a Christian song. It's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Of all the things you would think that was funny, but this song meant more to this little girl than anybody could ever realize. Thank you.